In a small room on the third floor of Lindsley Chittenden Hall at Yale, there's a metal box that buzzes when you touch it wrong. You sit in front of it. You have a clipboard. You're told you're the teacher. The man in the other room behind a wall with a speaker is the learner. He's strapped to a chair, leather belts, electrodes on his arm. The scientist in the white lab coat, calm, sure of himself, hands you a list of word pairs. You read them out loud. The learner repeats them. When he gets one wrong, you flip a switch. You start at 15 volts. The light flicks. The learner grunts. You're told it's a memory test. This is 1961. The Soviets have a man orbiting the planet. America is anxious. The Cold War hums like background radiation. Your parents still trust institutions. People sign up for things. Obedience is a virtue. Yale is sacred ground, and this is science. It has to be. The switches are labeled in neat rows, 15 volts, 30 volts, 45. They climb in small steps like a ladder to nowhere. Labels go from slight shock to danger, severe shock. At the end, XXX. You're not told what XXX means, but you know. The man screaming behind the wall isn't really screaming at first. At 75 volts, he clears his throat. At 120, he yells. At 150, he begs. "Let me out," you hear. "I have a heart condition," he says. You look at the man in the lab coat. He's not yelling. He's not threatening. He's not even emotional. He just says 4 phrases calmly, like reading instructions on how to assemble a chair. Please continue. The experiment requires that you continue. It is absolutely essential that you continue. You have no other choice. You must go on. That's it. This is the Milgram Experiment, but nobody knows that yet. Stanley Milgram is 27 years old, Jewish, short, smart, too smart. He grew up in the Bronx, went to Queens College, then Harvard. His dissertation had something to do with conformity and culture. His advisor told him to think bigger. What he really wanted to know was, how did the Nazis do it? How do regular people, mailmen, teachers, barbers, end up gassing children and clocking back in on Monday morning like it's nothing? He couldn't ask that out loud, not in 1961, so he found another way to ask it. The ad in the New Haven Register said, "Men wanted for a study of memory and learning, $4.50 for an hour of your time." That's about $45 today. Not enough to lie for, just enough to show up. The volunteers came in, all men, white mostly, aged 20 to 50. Factory workers, salesmen, engineers. One guy ran a grocery store. One taught high school biology. They looked like your dad. Some wore glasses, some smoked through the whole thing. Each time, Milgram paired up 2 men. One was the teacher, one was the learner. But it was rigged. The learner was always a hired actor named Mr. Wallace. Nice guy, balding, friendly. He wore a cardigan. He smiled like your uncle who tells corny jokes at Thanksgiving. He always lost the coin toss. The real subject, the teacher, was led into the other room, the one with the buzz box, the wall speaker, the switches. At first, nobody really hesitated. People flipped the switches like they were ringing a doorbell. But by 150 volts, something happened. The learner started shouting. Not vague discomfort, real panic. He yelled that his heart hurt. He begged to be let out. He screamed. Then, silence. No response, just static from the speaker. The lab coat guy didn't flinch. "Please continue," he'd say. Most people laughed, not because it was funny, but because that's what your brain does when it short circuits. You laugh when you're afraid. You laugh when you know something's wrong, but you're already in too far to climb out. One man sweated so much it soaked through his shirt. Another clenched his fist until his knuckles went white. Some stammered, some cried. One banged his head against the wall. One had a nervous seizure. His entire body shook uncontrollably, but his hand still moved to flip the next switch. A few walked out, but most didn't. 65%, 26 out of 40 went all the way to 450 volts. XXX. It's important to note, nobody was actually being shocked. Mr. Wallace was fine. The screams were pre-recorded. The silence was scripted. But the teacher didn't know that. He believed he was killing a man in a cardigan for getting a word wrong. Milgram didn't smile when he saw the results. He looked haunted. He hadn't expected it to work so well. He thought maybe 1 in 100 would go all the way, maybe 2. But 65%? The number felt radioactive. He ran the test over and over. Different subjects, different labs, different variations. Move the learner closer. Obedience dropped a little. Make the teacher hold the learner's hand to shock the plate. Lower still. Have another teacher rebel and walk out. Obedience dropped like a rock. But the pattern was clear. If you put a man in a white coat and tell someone he's in charge, people will do things they can't live with. They'll do it sweating, crying, laughing hysterically, but they'll do it. Milgram tried everything to explain it away. Maybe it was Yale, the prestige. Maybe it was the wording. Maybe people were confused. So he moved the experiment to a rundown office building in Bridgeport, changed the signage, stripped away the Ivy League glow. Still, 48% went all the way. He asked psychiatrists to predict the outcome. They were certain, absolutely certain, that only 1 in 1,000 would go to the maximum voltage. That's the kind of faith experts had in the average man. They were wrong. When word of the experiments leaked, people lost their minds. The press called it sadistic, unethical, disturbing. The New York Times said Milgram had revealed a dark truth, but at what cost? The subjects weren't told the truth until afterward. Some were furious. One man said he'd never be able to trust scientists again. One burst into tears during the debriefing. Others shook Milgram's hand and said thank you. Milgram published the results in 1963. It shook the academic world. A few years later, he expanded it into a book, Obedience to Authority. It sold millions, but even as the book made the rounds, the experiment haunted him. For the rest of his life, Milgram had to explain to ethics boards, to TV interviewers, to angry citizens that he hadn't forced anyone to do anything. All he did was ask. The switches were always there. The labels were always clear. No one had a gun to their head. No one threatened their family. No blackmail, no bribes. Just a man in a white coat saying, "Please continue," and one hand reaching for the next switch. If you want to know what people are capable of, it's not hard. Don't torture them. Don't starve them. Don't blackmail them. Just tell them it's okay. Just hand them a clipboard. Just wear a lab coat. The rest takes care of itself.